power mapping is something that we have been doing at SMART, that we sort of evolved as a system in order to try and advance pilots in integrated mobility. And it's kind of evolved into something that's done a little bit more than just assessing what's there, but it's actually inspired a whole lot of action. So I'm just going to tell you, this is where we've done our pilots in integrated door-to-door urban mobility. And we do that through something called New Mobility Hub Networks, which is basically, if you can imagine, places across a region, sort of like Starbucks, really close to each other, that bring a lot of modes of transportation together. So basically they provide the connectivity and the last mile. So, you know, when you stop at the bus rapid transit stop, a bus can come and pick you up, and from there it might take you to your car, and then you drive the last mile home, or a shuttle. So it's a whole way of getting door-to-door integrated IT-enhanced mobility. So we started to do some of this work in India and South Africa, and now we're doing it a lot more in the U.S. And the whole context beside it, I've already mentioned that the world is urbanizing, and we can't sort of think the single mode, auto-only, single occupancy vehicle approach. And then there are some other drivers that we have to deal with, like sustainability, climate change, congestion, and all these things that have been already mentioned. And, you know, it's really easy for us to want that single solution, but we know there's no one single bullet. But the really great thing is that around the world, there's massive innovation happening, especially in the developing countries, around sustainable transportation solutions. But there are so many, and they're hard to bring them together. And as we talked about the toolkit, that we need to bring them together in a sort of a system. And so I needed to think that through in my head, and I realized, oh my goodness, you know, there are sort of quadrants. There are the people up on North Campus that think about alternative fuels, IT, really important things, but that's obviously not going to solve the whole problem. And then across the road, there are the planners that are thinking of the policy and the land use and the urban design, which is also really crucial, but not the only answer. And then you've got, you know, Robin Chase and all these different fractional use folks that are looking at new services and shuttles and businesses that actually provide the links between these different modes. And then you've got these new products like different size buses, different size cars, segways, interesting bicycle approaches, rickshaws. But what's happening is it's not coming together, and it needs to be integrated, because what we're talking about is the user. We're talking about the person living in the real estate, and we're talking about the person getting from A to B. And what happens is they can't get all the way to B. So we've been organically experimenting with approaches to connectivity for the door-to-door trip. And that's where the power mapping comes in. We started by needing to identify where things already do connect, because we heard about a study in Ann Arbor that asked people, well, you know, if you needed some more sustainable transportation, what would it be? And about 60% of the answers were apparently things that were already in Ann Arbor. So there was a notion that, my goodness, you know, there's already stuff there, people don't know it exists, and people don't know that they can connect from mode to mode. They can think about A to B with all these different opportunities and services. So after we worked in India and South Africa, we started to work in Washington, D.C. with the director of planning. And I said to her, well, I can't believe that you want to do this, because D.C. is doing pretty well in terms of sustainable transportation, especially after we'd been working with Raj in India. And that's a bit more of a challenge when you're dealing with auto rickshaws and no notion of actual lanes of traffic. So, you know, when we got to D.C., Harriet said to me, well, you know, how should we start? And we bring together entrepreneurs, businesses, city leaders, IT folks to plan out the integrated mobility mix. And so she said, I said, can you do a map overlaying all of the different corridors, all of the different amenities? And so I said, where two or more of those connect, put a red dot, and that will be a new mobility hub. So she came back and she said the two isn't going to work because we've got too many. So we were faced with this entire region. We had one of those big charrette maps, and we had an entire region of Washington, D.C. that was covered with a grid of red dots of places where it would connect, you know, boat, taxi, parking structure, train, bus. And we all collectively realized that Washington, D.C. already has a new mobility hub network, but that people don't know about it. And first and foremost, you need to get the signs up, you need to get the IT connected, and you need to sort of develop that system in people's minds as well. So this mapping process has evolved since then, and we've been doing it with a number of different cities, and we're going to be doing some of it today. It generally takes about a half a day, or a whole day is better. Today we're going to take 55 minutes to do it, but I really strongly encourage it as a process. I just wanted to show you, this is the idea of how hubs could look. There are many different kinds of hubs. They can be super Cadillac, all the different modes, or they can be making sure that there's a bus stop in a suburban outlying parking lot so that you can drive to the parking lot and then get into the whole integrated system from there. And there are a whole bunch of benefits to it which I won't go into. But in terms of making that happen, there are many different advantages of doing the mapping that we found out after we started doing it, and that was that it really brings people together actively, people that don't normally talk to each other. Often, the Zipcar people and the free bike people don't talk to the cab companies and the leaders of the transit agencies and Ford Motor Company, which is one of the key sponsors and partners in what we're doing, because they see integrated mobility as the future of transportation. Oh, you just saw my whole presentation. Sorry about that. Bringing people across sectors has allowed these different connections to happen through the mapping. So I mentioned that it points out what's already there, but it also highlights the gaps. Where do we need hubs? Where do we need to add amenities at hubs that are already there? And, it gives you a chance to have fun with magic markers, which at this time in the day is really great. So you get to draw on a big map, and you get to envision, oh, well, you know what, this should be here, just like a charrette that you're probably used to. But to connect transportation modes has been something that's surprisingly not been done very much, especially here in this region. So finally, it provides a framework for action. As soon as you can see that there are places where you can already develop integrated mobility, things are already there. You don't have to wait for the land use or the policy change. You can bring actual shuttles in to connect with the existing system and create an integrated system even before you get the M1, even before you get the land use change that we would all love. So how the mapping process works, you go to the ballroom. You get a regional lay of the land from Megan. So she's going to give you a 3-minute, here's what the region has in terms of all kinds of transit amenities and transportation amenities and free bikes and all of those things. And then you go to your table. And at your table, it'll be either a map of Detroit downtown, or it'll be a map of Ann Arbor, or it'll be a map of the Wally train line. And what you do is, number one, is you identify transportation connectivity points. Where do the trains and the buses connect? Where do all the different amenities connect? Then the second thing you do, and this is a new twist because we haven't done it with real estate consideration before fully. We've talked about it, but it hasn't been a concerted effort. So this is a really exciting thing for us to be working with the transportation folks who have done some of this mapping and some of the development folks who are thinking about the real estate aspects and the TOD-related things, but it's sort of beyond TOD. And then we identify economic development and business opportunities. What are some of the sparks from making these connections happen? What are even some of the innovations that can happen around IT, like door-to-door trip planning, A to B trip planning, integrated fare payment, and how does that link with the kind of real estate development that we want? So that's the mapping. Are there any questions about the mapping? Okay, I'm going to go on then. So you've got power mapping, and then you have four concurrent sessions. Oh, right. I know. I just like to be so much closer to you and be able to see you. But there we go. I'll see you later. Okay. So session number 1 is about the Argonaut building, a case study, and that's going to have Eric Larson, Ann Beck, Joe Kopietz, and Ken Herbart in the Michigan room. Session number 2 is TOD planning and the public role. Public sector incentives drive private sector investment. And that's Jana Ecker, Barry Murray, Jim Becker, and that's in the Vandenberg room. Session number 4 is real estate opportunities, specific development opportunities for specific transportation initiatives. That's Eli Cooper, Sue Mosey, Carmen Palumbo in the Hussey Room. And then we have an additional 2 that are related to transportation, but of course anyone is welcome to attend. One is transportation resilience and national security. That's looking at transportation and resilient infrastructure from the point of view of national security. And then finally, design in motion. That's linking design with new mobility innovation. So I think with that, we'll roll up our sleeves. Oh. Oh, I'm sorry, I left out economic gardening. What a beautiful title, too. Economic gardening, new opportunities in development. That's Terry Sanford in the Kalamazoo Room.